castles in Wales. They're symbols of warlords, princes, sieges and bloody battles. But this week, we're going to a castle that's way off the beaten track and is proving something of a mystery. Upton Castle is thought to be medieval and about 700 years old, but no one knows for sure, not even the people who live in it.
We don't know anything about the history, really. It's all guesswork.
We need to find out when the castle was built and what it looked like back then, and get to grips with the equally mysterious church or chapel that stands nearby. It's going to be an action-packed 3 days.
I'm not feeling moat, are you?
A little bag here with some water in it. The little cooey noises.
Fantastic.
We could be dealing with the best part of 1,000 years of history. 3 days, fingers crossed.
There's lots of towers.
8 a.m, day one of the dig. 3 of our chief investigators, site director Neil Holbrook, geophysics wizard John Gator, and historic buildings expert Richard K. Morris are taking their first look at Upton Castle.
It's a house. Is it a house? Is it a castle?
It's a bit of everything. All this bit looks to be sort of post-med and probably Georgian.
So what's that, 18th,
19th century, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But then you've got a break there in the masonry, and then that bit looks real. So,
real medieval?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just not kind of what I was thinking, you know? I was thinking, coming to a castle, I was expecting to see not a house, which is what it looks like.
We're in the heart of Pembrokeshire on the western edge of South Wales. Upton Castle immediately strikes us as a right old mishmash. From some angles, it looks exactly like a medieval castle. But from others, it looks much more like a 19th century manor house. The small church or chapel that stands a short distance away on the other side of a high wall is pretty puzzling too. The age and origins of this building are both unclear, as is the identity of the people whose effigies sit on top of tombs inside. But first things first, the castle is our priority, though before we've even put a spade in the ground, Neil's got doubts about whether any of the building is medieval. This is a big problem, isn't it? We've got to try and find out everything that we can about a castle which nobody seems to know much about at all.
It's confusing, isn't it? You know, have we got a medieval castle with lots of later additions, or is it actually just someone's fake house playing at being a castle?
Yeah, when I drove up here, the whole thing looks like it could be made by a Victorian chocolate manufacturer.
Yeah, it could be a complete fake, couldn't it? Is it real or is it fake?
A bit of both. We've got genuine medieval bits here, but the idea is, you know, we need to get rid of the extensions on paper, theoretically, not actually. I might get a bit upset. And work out the extent of it. Now,
where'd you start?
Well, just looking at the plan first. I mean, to me, you've got this front range here. It just screams out courtyard here, in that area.
Well, that's the first test, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you've got that as a hypothesis, then really we need to be able to get some targets to do it.
All right, that's the courtyard. Anything else?
Well, we need to know where this building stands on that kind of castle fortified house boundary. Looking at the front of it, where the entrance is, there's some evidence there I can see of possibly a drawbridge across a moat.
If we get a drawbridge pit here,
Yeah.
which then proves that the castle's got a moat round it, to me that says this is a real castle built to withstand attack and siege and not just someone's fake castle.
Yeah.
So, at least we got a strategy.
We have a strategy, but we've only got 3 days, and it's a big building. Richard's convinced that some of the building, at least, is genuinely medieval. But we need proof. We're going to put in 1 trench in front of the castle to look for a moat, and 2 at the rear to try to find traces of a courtyard. Time to call in the people who'll be doing all the digging, our regular lineup of eager archaeologists. Hot to trot as ever, they get down to work right away in the area behind the castle, where we think there might have been a medieval courtyard.
You could have this like a little sentry box. Hey?
When have I ever stood still for more than 5 minutes, let's be honest?
Well, it's usually your mouth that's moved before everything else, isn't it, eh?
Phil, Rakshar and the others are putting in the first of the many trenches they'll be opening up over the next 3 days. But I'm going to track down the brave, or perhaps that should be foolhardy people who are letting us trash their garden. Would you let the time team into your house? I'm not sure I would, particularly if I had a place like this. It's not a bad gaff, is it? I think the kitchen's through here. Thank you. You two are bonkers, you know that, don't you?
Yeah.
Possibly.
You must have known that a place like this would be a money pit.
Well, we've done up quite a few houses in the past, but I don't think we'd ever taken on a challenge quite as big as this.
Stephen Prue Barlow bought Upton Castle in 2007, having stumbled across the place as tourists. It was a sort of retirement project for them after selling their Hampshire company. What was it like when you moved in?
Antiquated.
That's to say the least. Prue wouldn't drink the water here for the first year we were here because the lead pipes and the reservoir, so-called reservoir, had a dead rat in it when we arrived, which was blocking off the water. So she was carrying water from our daughter's house.
What is it that you would like us to find out?
So many people, when they come here, they ask us about the history. We don't know anything about the history, really. It's all guesswork. So we're hoping that you guys will be able to find out something a bit more concrete for us about the origins and the age of it. I mean, that would be wonderful to know a little bit more about it.
We'd love to be able to tell Steve and Prue everything they want to know. And round at the front of the castle, we may be getting a step closer to doing just that.
We'll just take this bit of grass out.
Neil's first shot is a deep trench in a place where a medieval moat might once have been. They're hoping to see signs of different coloured soil where the moat would have been filled in. But the deeper the digger goes, the less there is to see.
Let's back to the tarmac, Neil.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not feeling moat, are you?
You're not going to have a moat out there.
No. Okay, Ian, can do it. So, John, given where we think the drawbridge is here, we're pretty confident it surely would be where you are now if it's coming through.
You just need to clean that, but I'm 99% with you that we haven't got a moat.
This is quite a small trench, but actually what it's told us is quite major, isn't it? That's actually a fake drawbridge. It's not real, it's just for show. These guys are trying to look like an imposing castle, but perhaps really it was more of a fortified house.
It seems that Neil is still unconvinced that Upton has any right to call itself a real castle. And we're certainly in the dark over its date. So while he supervises the hunt for evidence underground, I'm taking castle expert Richard and our historian Susie Lipscomb to meet one of Upton's famous neighbours. Just 3 miles down the road lies the town of Pembroke and its amazing Norman castle. Unlike Upton, there's no doubting the status of this place. It's one of the finest examples of castle design to be found anywhere in Wales. This is a proper Norman castle, isn't it?
Proper, yeah.
This is power, this is defence.
It certainly is. And it's
Work on Pembroke Castle began soon after the Norman invasion of Britain in 1066. It's one of the most terrifying structures the Normans ever built. Imagine what the locals must have thought when this first went up.
Well, apart from being conquered, they've also got this huge castle built on the best and highest part of the landscape. And this is only the bits we've got left, because this would have been full of other buildings all around the courtyard here. And then they go and build that in the 12th century. I mean, that round tower isn't just a keep. It's a symbol of power. It's saying, we are powerful, we can do this.
Conquering wild and mountainous Wales presented the Normans with a far greater challenge than low-lying England. They never took the north of the country and struggled for years further south. What about here? Pembrokeshire is a heck of a long way away from the Norman power base, isn't it?
It is, but it's easy to reach by boat. So that's how they conquered Pembrokeshire, because they came in by sea. In fact, there were so many of them here that in the end it was known as Little England beyond Wales.
Oh, I've heard that expression. Pembroke Castle was designed to protect Little England from attack. But with so many unconquered Welshmen around, the Normans couldn't just build one castle, they had to build lots of them right across Pembrokeshire.
Have a look at this. You can see this line is the divide between the Anglicised south and the Welsh north. And you can see it's full of castles protecting it. You can see they're everywhere.
Does our castle show up here?
It does. It's here. Upton's there, and it has surrounded by other castles like Haverfordwest, Pembroke and Tenby, so it's well protected and really at the heart of Little England beyond Wales.
So Upton may have formed part of a Norman defence network. But for that to be true, we must prove it's a genuine medieval castle, and we certainly don't know what it originally looked like. The two trenches that have gone in at the rear of the building, where there might once have been a medieval courtyard, may tell us a lot more. Team leader Neil is eager to find out what they've produced so far.
Cassie, you haven't been here for a while. How's the trench gone?
Well, not brilliant yet. We've got this sort of thin rubble layer, stuffed full of gorgeousness. Look at these, how about that for slipware?
Right, so what date's that?
I mean, that can be 17th century. This stuff's really nice, slightly earlier. That's imported from Spain, very snazzy, tin-glazed earthenware. All really solidly 17th, 18th century.
OK.
And then when you put the slots through to establish whether we've got a courtyard wall and what happens with this wall, you're back in the 19th century. I'm getting brick fragments and things like that.
So you've got 19th century material underneath 17th century material, which is the wrong way around, isn't it?
Backwards stratigraphy, brilliant. Just what you always want.
So I guess someone's come along here and dumped some earlier deposits in the 19th century.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Kind of has to be, really.
Discover the past with exclusive ancient history documentaries and ad-free podcasts presented by world-renowned historians from History Hit. Watch them on your smart TV or on the go with your mobile device. Download the app now to explore everything from the wonders of Pompeii to the rebellion of Boudica and the mysteries of prehistoric Scotland. Immerse yourself in the captivating stories of this remarkable era by signing up via the link in the description.
The 19th century deposits that Cassie's run into have prevented her from uncovering any evidence relating to the castle's medieval origins. And she's not the only one who's stuck. Phil and Rakshar have run into similar difficulties, causing Neil some concern. He needs to stand back now and consider the whole site. One of the best tools for that is the laser-based survey system known as LiDAR.
I know you've been looking at the LiDAR data. What's that show us?
It's showing us one or two features. This is showing with the trees. We can strip them off. For me, what I can see most is this stream running past the castle.
And then those are very clear, aren't they? Those are the sunken lawns out the side.
Yeah.
The sunken lawns at the rear of the castle are the result of major landscaping that was carried out here in Victorian times. The LiDAR images suggest that the Victorians changed the site in a radical and problematic way, and that's borne out by a picture Neil stumbled across in the castle's archives.
This is the area before we did the Victorian landscaping. You see how the ground just falls away naturally? And they've cut that right back to make those sunken lawns and then presumably mounted this up to make a flat sort of courtyard area, which is where Cassie's digging. So it's no wonder that she's down about 2 metres and still going. They've actually made our life very difficult by just how much they really have changed this landscape.
End of day one, and quite frankly, it's been a pretty frustrating day here at Upton Castle. We put that trench in there because we thought that there might be a moat going round the castle, but we haven't found hide nor hair of it yet, nor have we looked inside these huge towers yet, although hopefully that's something we'll be doing tomorrow. We put a couple of trenches in here. one over there and one over there to try and establish whether or not we'd got some kind of medieval courtyard. But quite frankly, the Victorians did so much landscaping here that they've destroyed any evidence that there might have been. So tomorrow we're going to go here, because if it turns out that this little chapel is older than the castle, then that could be the key to the site itself. Beginning of day 2 here at Upton Castle in South Wales, where we're trying to make sense of the history of this beautiful castle. But quite frankly, so far, we've drawn pretty much of a blank, haven't we, Richard? You asked us to put in a trench there in order to establish whether there was a moat around the castle. Is there?
Apparently not.
You also thought that there might be a drawbridge here because of those holes. Have we got a drawbridge?
Doesn't seem to be.
Doesn't seem to be a drawbridge, doesn't seem to be a moat. 2 trenches you've put in around the back of the castle to establish whether or not there's a medieval courtyard.
Doesn't seem to be.
Doesn't seem to be either. And how much of the front of this castle do you think is really old? This is ridiculous.
No, it's real.
Oh, it's real? I can feel it's real.
It's still medieval. It's been tarted about a bit. But most of the clues are going to be inside this castle, and I just need some time inside the building, really.
Day 1 did seem to me to be pretty much of a travesty. In you get. And don't come out till you find something old. Oh, dear. I've just given Richard carte blanche to have a good old nose around in someone else's home. We need him to use all his building detection skills. Our archaeological attempts to pin down the castle's original medieval layout have run, well, into the ground. The trenches we've put in to find the medieval courtyard are still being worked. But there's no point digging any new ones because the Victorians have destroyed so much. Neil Holbrook has decided to broaden his focus to try and understand the whole site, starting with the nearby chapel. And I want to make sure I understand why. What are you doing around the back of the chapel, guys?
Well, Tony, you know, we're hoping that this could be the earliest building on the site. This could actually predate the castle.
Why do you think it might be early?
Well, because it's a chapel, it's quite large, and it's also not on the same alignment as the castle.
So what can you see that looks old here?
Well, one of the things that is obvious is this blocked-up doorway, this nice rounded arch. Now, that does look very early, and it's clearly been blocked up. What we can add is additional information under the ground by digging some small holes.
So where are you going to put these trenches?
One of the places will be here to actually try and see if there are any architectural features below ground level, which might give us a date for the doorway and therefore just how old this phase of the building is. But also to place one in here, because you can see there looks to be a join coming down the wall in here. Mm-hmm. Now, is that wall older than that wall, or is that wall older than that wall? We may be able to resolve that by getting down to the bottom.
So Neil and Phil plan to dig 2 trenches next to the chapel. They want to discover when it was built and whether or not both parts of the building were constructed at the same time. They're convinced that finding these things out will enable them to get a much better fix on the entire site. And another member of the team's focusing on the chapel too. Historian Susie Lipscomb has assembled all the documents she can find that refer to early Upton. She's discovered that a Norman family called the Maliphants owned the place for over 200 years. The little church must have served as their family chapel.
Right, so here we have this little building, which is quite
Are the people buried in the chapel Maliphants? Owner Prue Barlow would love to know.
It's quite incongruous, really, that this chapel should be here with these marvellous effigies.
Oh, wow. And you think that this is a Maliphant?
Well, we think it's a Maliphant, because the Maliphants were supposedly connected with Upton. It would be interesting to know which Maliphant it is.
Well, I think I can help because it's really easy to date these things. I've done a bit of research on it, and we can tell from sort of aspects of the armour what period this is. It looks like he's wearing a jupon, which was the fashion for the late 14th century. It's over the armour and it's very close fitting to his body. We can see the armour because we can see the chainmail coming out here, just under the waist, and this elaborate ceremonial belt. And if you look here, these are called gadlings, and they're for sort of close combat. Yeah, knuckle dusters. So I think we can confidently say it's from the late 14th century, which means if he's a Malafant, he's very likely to be Sir William Malafant, who died in 1362.
Gosh.
But there's another one, isn't there?
Yes, there is another one down here that we think is probably his wife.
But it's up here.
It's up here, away from the other one, which is perhaps strange that they're not together.
Well, they could be separate because they've been moved, or it could be that actually she's of a higher status because this is closer to the altar, which would fit with her being Sir William Malafant's wife, Margaret, because she was of a higher status, wasn't she?
She was a lady of means, apparently.
And actually, this makes sense that it would be his wife because, again, we can tell from dress. She's wearing a kirtle and a gown on top of that, and it's very close-fitting around the body, as you can see. And we can date that to the late 14th century because earlier in the century, she would have been wearing a wimple that would have covered her neck. I think we can pretty much say that that is Lady Margaret Malafant.
Gosh, that's really interesting to know all that.
That's great. We've discovered that the two main effigies are members of the Malafant family who lived during the 14th century. But was that when the castle was built? We're all looking to Richard to deliver some answers. He's only halfway through his exhaustive castle survey, but he's making pretty good progress.
Oh, look.
A rebate.
Ah, that's nice, isn't it? Is that what you wanted?
That's exactly what I wanted, yep.
Richard's asked Phil to investigate this arched opening at the rear of the castle because he thinks it could be a medieval doorway.
The door would have opened up and closed.
It looks like they've found the proof.
So the hinges are going to be up here.
Yeah.
And it's going to open inwards.
Going to open inwards.
And then the catch will be somewhere here. And then that literally seals the door.
Yeah.
So this would be an internal door through from a courtyard to get into the main castle itself.
Yeah, from the courtyard area out here, yeah.
So you'll be standing where the courtyard is.
I'm on the courtyard.
And I am actually walking into the castle.
Yeah.
Richard seems to have demonstrated that Upton Castle did possess a courtyard after all, and he's not done yet. Inside the two great towers at the front of the castle, the location nowadays of a massive wood store, he's made an equally extraordinary find.
Right, Tony, you wanted medieval?
Yeah.
I've got medieval upstairs.
It may well be a run-down storage area today, but Richard believes that this part of the building had a very illustrious past.
Oh, well, that's a bit special, isn't it?
It is.
That's not 19th century.
Real stuff.
Presumably this is a medieval fireplace.
Yep, that's a medieval fireplace, early 14th century.
So would there have been a floor just below that?
Yes, and this old ladder here is conveniently sitting on corbels that would have held the great floor beams going across the place.
Wow. So the floor that we're standing on now, that's not as old?
No, this is coming in the 19th century probably. It's part of the stables. Yeah. So you've got basically one chamber above the other, and this would be the poshest, so this is the great hall at the top.
Things are really hotting up now here at Upton Castle. Richard's new discoveries have proved the castle is genuine and taken us a step closer to finding out what it looked like when it was built. And if that's not exciting enough, important discoveries are also being made in the churchyard outside the chapel.
These are the trenches that you put in to work out how old the chapel is and whether it's older than the castle, right?
Yeah.
So how have we got on?
They're both going really well, Tony. In Matt's trench, we've actually dug down now and exposed the base of the doorway, and that matches the floor level inside the chapel. So that's really nice. It helps to build that picture. This is a fantastic trench where Phil's been digging, because can you see you've got the big wall here, and this bit has been added on to that bit.
How can you see that, Phil?
There's two things. Firstly, we've got this big stone here, which is clearly related to that wall over there.
Yeah.
This stone here, which belongs to this wall, and you can see that it's riding up over the top of this stone. So this stone, which is part of this wall here, has to be later than that one,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is part of that one.
And that's great because it shows this is the early part of the church and it's still quite large. And so maybe that matches with our theory of having a large church before the castle. But come with me, Tony, because what I want to do now is open another trench, because when you have early churches, it's a very common feature that they actually sit within circular churchyards. Ignore these walls. These are much, much later in time. So come on down here.
Right.
The place we're heading for is a large walled garden, about 100 yards from the castle itself. Neil hopes to find clues here about the age of the chapel, which could open up the earliest history of the site.
So we're going to dig a trench through here, see if we can find a ditch or something. If we could get a circular churchyard, that will prove that is pre-castle. And also, Paul has been fiddling around in the potato beds.
I certainly have.
And what you got?
More medieval pottery than the entire field team put together.
Now, when you say medieval, what do you mean by that?
13th, 14th century.
And where did you find that?
One from just down there and two from in the potato bed.
So this is completely new evidence in a completely different part of the site. We're going to put a trench in here to see whether this area links in with the chapel, and given that we've already found medieval pottery here, who knows what we might find after lunch.
Challenging second day here at Upton Castle in Pembrokeshire. A new trench is being opened up in a large walled garden, where small pieces of medieval pottery turned up just before lunch.
Definitely a seam of yellow clay overlying the red sandstone underneath.
We're hoping to find things here that will shed new light on the earliest history of the site. But it's not the only new trench on the go. Back in the churchyard, our chief investigator Neil Holbrook has opened up no fewer than 4 new trenches in the hope of finding out more about the chapel's earliest phase. This has brought the total number of trenches we've dug so far to a pretty impressive 10.
The way you've got that yellowy material and these stones.
Yeah, that's good.
That's an awful lot of holes. While Neil's grappling with them, I'm going to find out whether Susie's filled in more blanks on the castle side of the story.
Yeah, I've been finding some good stuff. I'm glad you're here. I want to show you. There's some interesting accounts that tell us something about what's been going on here. This is from 1307, and you've got mentions of Pembroke and other castles nearby, including Upton, which is Upton in a different spelling. And this is a little bit later. This is the 36 Edward III, which is 1362, and it's charging fees to William Malafant. He is the chap that you can see in effigy in the chapel.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. So what do these 2 little snapshots tell us?
Well, they say that there's someone here renting land as a tenant of a lord, so probably a minor lord, but they don't give us all the detail we'd like.
So when do we first get something more vivid about Upton Castle?
Ah, well, we've got this from the early 15th century. This is an account of the uprising of Owen Glendower, who was, of course...
The great Welsh hero.
That's the one, yes.
Sometimes called the Welsh Braveheart, Owen Glendower led a ferocious rebellion against English rule at the start of the 15th century. English-speaking landowners here in Pembrokeshire were petrified that he was going to march in and rob them of everything they'd got, so a resistance plan was hastily drawn up. The owners of Upton Castle seem to have been closely involved.
The crucial thing is here, 3 people are named to raise £15, 2 shillings and 8 pence, which is lots and lots of money, and one of them is Henry Malafant.
And do we know which Malafant he was?
Yes, he's the son of the chap we've got in effigy.
So, at this really significant time in Welsh history, Upton is playing quite a significant part.
It is, absolutely. It's a central cog. It's making sure that Owen Glendower doesn't get his Welsh independence.
So Upton did play its role in the defence of Little England, but how close are we to discovering its real age and original size? Richard Morris has had plenty of time today to piece together all the evidence to come up with a definitive verdict on when the place was built and just how big and impressive it was at that time. I reckon it's time to pin him down.
Richard, You said you wanted 2 hours in order to crack what this house was really about. You've had double that. What have we got?
I'm now convinced it's definitely genuine medieval stuff, early 14th century.
But without a drawbridge?
Well, not necessarily without a drawbridge. We're in the entrance here, and this had to be the only way into the castle, looking at the rest of it. And above us, a very tall vaulted ceiling, which is stone, possibly medieval. And above that is a medieval chamber that doesn't seem to have very big windows, but does seem possibly to be a winding hatch for a drawbridge.
Ah! Over, not a moat?
No, it could be a pit of some description.
So these two little holes here, we could reinstate them as possibly where the chains came through?
I'm reasonably convinced, anyway.
What else have you got?
Well, it does look like this place is a lot bigger than we think it is.
Oh.
I can tell. So if I come through here...
Yeah.
Into this space, you get some idea of what's going on. Because we are quite a distance from the entrance. There's the entrance we just come through.
Yep.
There's a tower block, and we're right at the back here. But look, we're in a vaulted space.
Mm.
So it's possibly stone vaulted medieval ceiling. And if you look at the plan here, the walls of the kitchen, which is next door, are extraordinarily thick. So that could be medieval as well. And you can see the logic of suggesting a courtyard down here, which has been completely wiped out by all the Victorian landscaping.
So, Richard believes that when Upton Castle was built back in the 14th century, it looked not like this, but like this. Shorn of all its later additions, it stands revealed as a small but well-built medieval castle with at least 3 towers, a large courtyard and substantial living quarters. The age and original appearance of the castle are now pretty much sorted out, but there's still work to be done. Our lead archaeologist, Neil Holbrook, believes that the chapel may have predated the castle and could have been at the centre of an early settlement. Our challenge now is to find out if he's right. Everyone's been hoping that the trench in the walled garden would produce important clues. Sadly, though, that particular hole isn't much help.
Ian,
Hi, Neil.
this trench we had hopes of. Break a slope, hope for a feature. What you got?
I've got a very, very peculiar feature. I've never seen anything quite like it before.
The trench has thrown up confusing evidence which no one can really interpret. A big disappointment. But there's better news in the churchyard next door. The new trench that Phil and Raksha have been working on has turned up a really exciting find.
Now look, I've got a little bag here with some water in it, which ought to give you a bit of a clue that what I'm hoping to show you is actually window glass. I think we've got them here now, yeah. Ah, the little cooey noises.
Fantastic. Well, look at that. Yeah, well, this looks like window glass. We've got a nice clear bit here. And then this is a really lovely, beautiful bit of stained glass. Isn't that lovely? So it's a kind of reddy, yellowy colour, which is beautiful.
Now, the crucial thing is, can you date the stained glass? Is it medieval window glass?
Well, it probably is. I mean, we're taking it from a medieval context, aren't we? And we've got the chapel just here. So I think there's every chance that it is medieval glass.
I mean, I'm just over the moon about it because I think for the first time now, it's just beginning to add a little bit of extra detail to what we know about what this building looked like in the medieval period. We know it had windows and we know it had glass in it, but now we can actually start to say they've got stained glass windows in there. And it's just such a nice additional feature of this building.
It brings it to life, doesn't it? That was lovely.
With rather nice finds starting to appear, there's a distinctly upbeat tone to the traditional end of day 2 meeting outside, afraid so, the local pub.
Well, day 1 was pretty frustrating, but we've had a pretty good day today, haven't we?
I think we really have. I mean, I'm just so overjoyed at actually being able to nail the fact that we've got 2 clear phases in that chapel. And we've actually now beginning to get some finds which actually tell us what that 13th, 14th century chapel was.
You're the boss. How's it been for you?
I'm feeling much better today. Last night I was a bit down in the dumps, to be frank. But today, actually, all the trenches have delivered good archaeology. And those ones in the churchyard, really interesting. The Victorians have made a right mess of this site archaeologically. But the one area they didn't touch was the graveyard. So by homing on there, I think we can get these elusive glimpses of the earliest occupation.
So everyone's feeling optimistic. But we're not home and dry just yet. We still don't know when the chapel was built or if a settlement existed here at that time. One day to go then, and lots to find out. Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Castle, although quite frankly we're turning our back on the castle today because it's pretty much done and dusted. Richard reckons he knows what the shape of it is now and also the approximate date. So now we're going to see if we can find evidence of what was here before the castle, which will help us understand why the castle was built here in the first place. And so far in Phil's trench, morning Phil.
Morning, Tony.
We've got a roof tile and it's glazed. See that little bit of glazing there? So that means it's posh and it's old, although quite old. Quite how old, we're not sure yet. We're also going to be fiddling around inside this chapel. Richard, have we got any idea how old the chapel is yet?
Well, we've got bits of evidence. There's accumulation. I mean, the obvious thing is this font here. This is going to be around 1200, and it's quite crude, but it's pucker for that sort of date.
What about the doors?
Well, the doorways are interesting because we've got opposing doorways. We've got the main entrance there, but we've also got a blocked one in the north wall. And that type of plan form is quite typical of churches of the 12th and very early 13th century. So all those bits of evidence to me suggest we've got a chapel here that could be around 1200.
I suppose this is too early for documentary evidence.
No, not at all. In fact, Gerard of Wales, have you heard of him?
Yes.
Great historian. There's an account where he had a dispute with Osbert, the Archdeacon of Carmarthen. And in the account, he mentions that there are churches and chapels in several areas near here, including Upton, which is another variant spelling for Upton. So it doesn't tell us any more than there is an ecclesiastical site here, but this is written between about 1190 and 1210, which fits in perfectly, Richard, with what you're saying.
The chancel is late.
So old documents and standing remains both suggest that the oldest part of the chapel, where we're standing now, was built at the start of the 13th century, 100 years before the castle. This is important information, but that's not the end of the story for Neil and his team.
Tracy, I've been putting lots of hope onto these two trenches.
The main thing that Neil's keen to discover is whether some kind of settlement went with the chapel, and if it did, what drew people to this particular spot. He's not exactly drowning in finds that could help him find out. Before long, though, we could all be drowning in something else. Well, this old weather's putting a bit of a damper on it, isn't it?
I feel slightly desperate, if you want the honest truth, is that it seems as if all the archaeology is coalescing around the churchyard. Now, we have to get answers in there. Are we going to find some of this pre-castle archaeology that we've been searching for so hard? And, you know, I think, if you ask me honestly, it's touch and go, this weather.
Time Team often comes into its own at times like this, of course. There's nothing like a downpour to bring out everyone's British pluck. But I have to admit, we don't often get rain like this. The Geophys boys, who are surveying the chapel floor to try to confirm the building's age, are managing to stay dry. But everyone else is having to grit their teeth and suck up whatever the weather gods decide to throw at them.
If the rain was only coming downwards, we'd have a chance of staying dry, but it's sheeting sideways now.
It is absolutely foul out there. I mean, thank the Lord for this cover.
Yeah, but you have stopped digging downwards, haven't you? And you're not at the bottom yet.
No, we are not at the bottom yet. I mean, we've cleared off all the layers that relate to the chapel. We are now into grave fill. This is a churchyard. People have been dying here for centuries. They're all going to be in here. And we simply haven't got the time to deal with them.
So it's just an eerie coincidence that you stopped digging downwards at exactly the moment when the rain started raining even harder?
Not at all. I mean, we could carry on. We've got a cover. We could carry on. We're the lucky ones. We've got a cover.
Yeah, it doesn't stop this sideways rain, though.
While Phil's been doing his best to avoid disturbing human burials, another member of the team has come across one that could be very good news.
Is it ready to lift?
Time Team's Tracy has uncovered a human skeleton that's got everyone very excited indeed.
I think we can go ahead and lift the two of the lower arm bones that we can see there, just crossing over the pelvis.
Can you tell much about the the person the bone belonged to?
They look adult. I mean, that's one thing I can say.
Phil was anxious to avoid relatively recent burials, but the context in which this one's been found makes it plain it dates from the medieval period.
Oh, that's come up beautifully, isn't it?
Actually, yes, considering the state of some of the bone we've had, that's actually quite good. So if we pop that one gently in there.
The individual we've found might have been alive before the castle was built at the start of the 14th century.
Here we are. It's one of the earliest occupants of this place.
Can I have the bolt? There we are. Now, we'll take those off to be carbon dated, and then hopefully we'll be able to tell whether this person was around before the castle was built, which would be really good information.
And now we know for sure, after carbon dating, that the body does indeed date from the pre-castle era. So what was Upton like in that faraway time? Aided and abetted by Richard and Susie, who've both come up trumps over the past 3 days, I'm going to try to conjure up the scene.
If we'd been sitting round this tree in, let's say, the year 1200, what would we have seen all around us?
Well, I think we'd have had that little stone chapel there already. And you don't build a chapel in the middle of nowhere, so there'd been some sort of settlement as well, with possibly timber frame buildings. But I think the significant thing is it's Upton. It's not a Welsh name. It's not a Celtic name.
So this is a new name that was brought in by the invaders, as it were?
Exactly that, yes.
But that doesn't mean it wasn't on the site of an earlier Welsh settlement or an earlier Welsh religious site, because we're sitting under this beautiful yew tree, and yew trees were often put in places of religious importance. So it could be that actually this place has been significant for a very long time, and there have been generations of wooden buildings here by the Welsh and then later by the Normans.
Why, though, would anyone want to found a settlement in an out-of-the-way place like this? Spotting a silted-up river inlet or creek in the castle's grounds has given Richard a vital clue.
Why might people have come here in the first place?
Well, I think it's quite a good strategic site. It's up the creek, so to speak. But we can never overestimate the importance of the river systems here.
Upton Castle lies just a few miles away from Milford Haven, a great estuary into which many rivers flow. Richard believes that these waterways drew people to Upton throughout the medieval period, and maybe even before.
They were the medieval motorways. They got you in, they got you out, and if you could control those, you've controlled all of this part of Wales. So I think there's probably been, these sites have been important for millennia.
I buy that theory, I think, but I'd still like to know for sure how old the chapel is, and the geophysics guys are currently my best hope of finding out. They've been examining the radar images produced by their survey of the chapel for a couple of hours now. So far, they haven't found anything that could pin the age of the chapel down, but a regular-looking shape among all the fuzzy blobs may be of major importance.
That's an apse.
No, that's probably wishful thinking, isn't it?
What do you... That's clear.
An apse is a semicircular extension, common in 13th century religious buildings, but pretty rare in ones erected later on. Finding evidence of one under the floor of the chapel would prove once and for all that the main part of the building is Norman. But is there really anything there?
Richard, we've got a bit of a dilemma. We both agree we've got a couple of burials there.
Right.
But when it comes to this end, Jimmy and I may be disagreeing. I think we have something that does that looks a bit apse-like.
I would think that was brilliant. I would love that.
Jimmy's not quite so convinced as I am.
Well, yeah, I mean, call me an old sceptic, but it just seems a bit too good to be true.
I mean, look at the results. That looks like a curving response to me.
It looks perfect.
You'd expect one of these chapels to have an apse, then?
It's certainly very common for these sort of chapels to have apses like that, and they tend to get demolished when they were extended with a full chancel. So that's perfect for a building around 1200.
Given that nobody's going to dig it, I think we can say that's an apse.
Well, having got an expert opinion, I could be swayed in that direction, I think.
So thanks to geophysics and, of course, good old-fashioned archaeology, we now know for certain what stood on this spot around 800 years ago at the start of the 13th century. There was no great castle here then, just a simple rural settlement dominated by a small stone chapel. It differed in several respects from the one we see today. The original Norman chapel had an apse instead of a chancel and 2 entrances, not one. It was plain, probably thatched, and was later extended. Then richly coloured stained glass adorned some of its windows, and its roof was covered with expensive glazed tiles. Clustered around it were almost certainly a number of simple timber-framed dwellings, the homes of English-speaking people whose lives were dominated by agriculture and Christian faith.
Where we're standing now would have been part of the apse. That's the very tip of the original Norman chapel, wouldn't it?
Yeah. This afternoon, geophysics through the radar actually found the foundations of the apse under this floor, an amazing discovery, and that proves that this chapel is Norman.
But it was quite a struggle to get there.
Hasn't it? Been a roller coaster 3 days with ups and downs and false clues, but it's all come together, as so often on Time Team, on the last afternoon.
It's been quite an up and down 3 days for you two as well, hasn't it?
It certainly has. It's really amazing to have found it out at the end, yeah.
You've got so many things to be able to impress your friends with.
Yeah. We really have, yeah.
Well, yeah, not only the chapel and the age of it, but the fact that parts of the house that we live in, we've discovered that were parts of the original castles. So
that's quite nice to know, isn't it?
Very nice, yes.
3 days ago, when we came here, we concentrated almost solely on the castle, but we now realise it wasn't the castle, it was here that was not just a place of worship, but was the very centre of the community. And that was